because this is one of the biggest reasons why Chicago has been struggling. And if Chicago is going to blow it up, then Zach Lavine needs to be the first to go. Chicago needs to blow it up. The Bulls went from being the new, exciting, fun team last season to now being an under 500 ball club. And it's not like they really lost anything, only a few changes happened. But now they're not even in playoff contention, currently at the 11th seed in the Eastern Conference. So what happened? And should the Bulls try to start the rebuilding process as soon as this season? Let's start off with one of the biggest reasons why I think Chicago has been struggling, and it's DeMar DeRozan. Last season, DeMar DeRozan was a very underrated pickup for the Bulls, and he did very well. In fact, at one point, he was an MVP candidate. Despite him aging, it seemed like he was at the best version of himself. But as the playoffs went on and as time has gone on, we've started seeing some issues, and that's his lack of shooting. Look, I've said in the past, not every single player needs to shoot. Like Ben Simmons is a prime example of that, because as long as you have other ways of scoring and you're able to get to the basket and you're able to help your team win, then you should be totally fine. Sure, some people will criticize you telling you need a jump shot, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Except one thing I never really talked about when it came to that topic specifically is longevity. So sure, DeMar DeRozan could have that MVP season he had last year, and to be honest, this year he's not playing too bad. He's averaging about 25 points per game, but they're not winning. And also, it seems like the three-point shooting isn't just with DeMar DeRozan. Also, one of the points I never really made about when it came to not needing to be a three-point shooter is the fact that those players, hence Ben Simmons, which is just the example I'm going to use, weren't the number one option on their team. Ben Simmons at one point was never the number one option on that team, whether it being the 76ers or the Brooklyn Nets. He was never their number one scorer, number one option at all. So whatever he did was just extra stuff. But DeMar DeRozan, on the other hand, to some people is the number one option in Chicago. If you asked me, I would have told you 2 years ago it was Lavine, but now I'd argue it's more DeRozan, but it's really up to you. But regardless of that, Chicago is not a shooting team. And of course, I'm not saying DeMar DeRozan is the only reason why, but it's definitely interesting to see that your number one option can't shoot the three. In fact, statistically, Chicago is one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the NBA. And the fact of the matter is that three-point shooting is a part of today's game, and it's definitely going to affect your offense. I'm not saying it's the end of the world for Chicago, but it definitely is a factor why they haven't been winning. Also, we have to talk about injuries. Now, last season, I think it was very interesting that every other game, it seemed like a big player on Chicago was injured. Whether it was the COVID outbreak or the key role players, I think Lavine and DeRozan got injured at one point. It was just very common last year on this team, and it really did make me think, okay, well, next season when they come back, they'll be fully healthy and we can run it back. Except they're not doing it that well. But there's one injury this season that has been kind of frustrating to see. Lonzo Ball was a pretty big pickup last season, and while he did some good stuff when he was on the court, he got injured again. And as someone that loves Lonzo Ball, it is so frustrating seeing him not play. And so far this season, he's yet to make a season debut despite us being in December, damn near January. And this isn't a 1 to 2 month thing. We have no idea when he's gonna come back. The last thing we heard is this guy couldn't even walk up a flight of stairs without being in pain. So as far as Lonzo goes, I have no idea when he's gonna play. You might be asking, why am I bringing up Lonzo Ball? He's not that big of a deal. Except I think he is. For one, Lonzo Ball earlier in his career was known as a really bad shooter, but as he's gone on, and especially in Chicago, he's became quite efficient. Also, he plays the point guard role very well. And I think if Chicago had Lonzo Ball leading them at point guard, that things would be a little bit better. For one, the way the offense is ran, the Bulls have a slow-paced offense right now, but with Lonzo Ball, it's high-paced and effective. Also, his defensive presence is really good. He's a great perimeter defender, which also helps out the defense. I've said this for the longest time, but I feel like Lonzo Ball is one of the best point guards when it comes to defense. Last season, Chicago had a good defense, but now this year, they have a bad defense and a slow-paced offense. And when you combine those two together, it's not going to end well. Hence the Bulls having a below 500 record. Now, I want to talk about Zach Lavine as well, because this is one of the biggest reasons why Chicago has been struggling. And if Chicago is going to blow it up, then Zach Lavine needs to be the first to go. Before we get into that, if you could leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. I'd very much appreciate it. Now, let's talk Zach Lavine. First off, let's just start pretty basic. His scoring has dropped off a little bit. This season, he's averaging 21 points per game, which, if anyone cares, has been his lowest scoring season since 2017. So yeah, earlier when I called DeMar DeRozan the #1 option, I think I can justify that now. But beyond stats though, it seems like his play style has just been changed. He went from someone that could drive to the rim to now a jump shooter. He's not the player he once was. He's not someone you could have built your team around. A couple years ago, the conversation was, is Zach Lavine going to leave the Bulls? And when they got DeMar DeRozan and Vucevic, that conversation kind of died down. But now for looking at it, is it really a bad thing if Lavine leaves? Is it a bad thing if you trade him for some decent key role players and maybe some picks? Because I would think most NBA teams want to win a championship and that's what they're thriving for. And as much as I love glorified Zach Lavine, your peak is max the second round, maybe the Eastern Conference Finals, but that's it. Lavine is not the same guy that you might have considered building a team around. Mind you, this is a guy they literally just extended in the summer. And well, a couple days ago, it came out that Zach Lavine and the Bulls have been kind of beefing, and then an argument got started in a loss versus the Timberwolves. Now, of course, Zach Lavine did some damage control to the media and told them like, hey, you know, this happens and things like that. But I've heard that way too many times for me to just now know it's damage control. And even if that's how he genuinely feels and the team feels, then cool. But regardless, that doesn't change the fact that something needs to change. Now, at this point, I couldn't tell you the trade value of Zach Lavine. I'm not sure how other teams percept him, how the Bulls percept him. But I think in an ideal world, if I'm a Bulls fan, I would honestly like to get some key role players, some picks, and try to just rebuild. I don't know how people feel about Vucevic despite him being mediocre in the interior when that's kind of your whole job. And considering what you gave up for him, I think you just, again, flip him. You flip Lavine, you flip Vucevic, whether this is at the trade deadline or the end of the year, whenever. But this team needs to blow it up. And at the time of recording this, I posted a poll on my YouTube community post and I asked the question, should Chicago blow it up? And 90% of people said yes. And the poll had about 140 plus votes, so that does give you some good perspective. Now, I don't expect them to trade Lavine tomorrow and trade DeRozan tomorrow and then Vucevic and all their other guys that are on big contracts. But I think Chicago needs to get to the stage where they're at, look, we're not going to win anytime soon. We're below 500. Let's just start losing and trade key players. Okay, but like that's tampering. So Adam Silver, if you're watching this, this is allegedly, of course. Okay, now he's gone, you bald-headed bitch. Look, if I'm a Bulls fan right now, I would just be ready for a rebuild for the next like 2 to 3 years. Now, mind you, Chicago has been a shitty ran organization for the past couple years, and I don't care if you bring up the Jordan years. Those were the Jordan years, but now we're here. And we've seen a consistent thing of Chicago trading good assets and those assets going to other teams and dominating. So you can imagine why I'm saying they need to rebuild this team and just start from the ground up. If you want to keep Lonzo, that's fine, but unfortunately, his career could like actually be over very soon. So even the biggest bright spot in this team is not even going to be able to play for a while, and that's me being generous. As far as that glorified Wilso Trill goes, yeah, I think it's time to just trade him very soon. Also, if you don't understand that joke, you should definitely follow my Twitter. But if you want to see a video where I talk about a team that has done one of the most successful rebuilds, click this video on the screen right here about the Memphis Grizzlies.